Hello, in this video you're going to learn how to create a simple game in Unreal Engine where the player has to go through holes in the wall, and if they accidentally end up hitting a wall, they'll get game over. So you'll learn about infinite generation and how to set up your own player character. If you've not, I recommend you check out my free Unreal Engine beginner course, which will teach you all the basics that you need to get started with Unreal Engine. There'll be a free link to it in the description of this video. With that said, let's get on with this video. Shout out to Codeco for this tutorial idea. To get started, I'm in the Unreal Engine project browser, and I'm going to start this game in a completely blank project, and I'm also going to make sure that I've not enabled starter content, and I'll just call this hole in the wall. So my project has loaded up. When working with Unreal Engine, I normally like to go to Window, then Content Browser, and select Content Browser 1. That way I can easily access and view all of the files inside my project. So the first thing we're going to do is set up a level for our game. So if we go to the content folder, right click and go create new folder, and I'll just call this level. Then if we go over here where it says file, then go new level, and just select basic, go create, and then if we click the save button, go inside the level folder, and I'll just call this my map. So this is going to be where we basically play our game. Now that we have a level to play our game, the next thing we're going to do is set up a character which we can play the game as. So if I go to my content folder, I'm going to right click again, go new folder, and just call this blueprints. Then if we head inside here, we're going to create our first blueprint, which is going to be for the player character. So if we just right click, go blueprint class, then select character, and just call this player underscore VP. If we double click and open this up and go over to the event graph, here in the event graph is basically where we code the behavior for our player character, and the first thing we're going to do is code the movement for our player character. So in some free space, if we just right click and look for mouse Y, so we want this one, and right click again and look for mouse X. So we're going to make it so we can move our player character by moving around our mouse cursor. If we just drag off this mouse Y and look for add movement input, this node basically allows us to basically make our character move in a certain direction. So this world direction will determine where in the world our player character will move. When we're moving with the Y axis with our mouse, we just want to right click and look for get actor up vector and connect this into here. That'll make it so we can kind of move our player character up and down with our mouse. For this scale value, this basically determines if we'll move positively or negatively in our Y direction. Right now, this is a value of 1, so this will basically mean I'll move positively in this direction. If this value was -1, then I'd move in the opposite of this direction. To determine this, we just want to drag off this axis value and look for multiply. Then right click here and go primitive variable and just call this mouse speed. Go compile. You can play around with this value, but I found a value of 1000 works pretty nicely. And then we just want to connect this into scalar value. Then we're going to do something similar for our mouse X. We just want to drag off here and look for add movement input. For the Y direction, we want to right click and look for get actor right vector, and then connect this into here. And then I'm just going to copy this, so I'll press Ctrl C and then Ctrl V to paste it, and just connect this into here. Then after we do this, we just want to drag off here and look for consume movement input vector, and just connect this into here. So what this will basically do is it'll basically take the last movement that we've done with our mouse Y and our mouse X. Then using this, we just want to drag off here and look for add actor local offset. This node will basically make it so we'll kind of move our player character in whatever the value is here. Of this return value, we just want to drag off and look for multiply, and we want to multiply this by get world delta seconds. So we just right click and look for get world delta seconds, and what this node does is it basically retrieves the amount of time that has passed since the last frame. We just want to right click here and make this to a float and then connect this into here. By doing this, this will basically make it so our character's movement is smooth. By multiplying our movement input by the get world delta seconds, this will make it so the movement of our character is smooth regardless if you're playing on kind of like a laggy or high-end PC. Then we just want to connect this into here, and this will basically make it so we can move our player character using our mouse cursor. So let's test this all out. If we go compile, close this, and to make it so we can play the game as our character, we just need to right click and go blueprint class, then select game mode base, and just call this our game mode underscore BP. Double click and open it up, and for our game mode we want to go over to the default pawn and change it to be our player BP that we just made. Then go compile, save and close this. Then if we go to world settings, you may not have this, so just go to edit, you want to go to window, and then make sure world settings is checked here. Then here for the game mode, just select the game mode BP. And you just want to go here where it says quickly add things to the project, go basic, then select player start. And this will make it so we basically spawn as our player character here in our game. So if I click the play button, I'm now my character. If I just click somewhere with my mouse, we can see I can move towards the left and the right just using my mouse, but I can't move up and down. And there's a reason for that. If I just go over to the player BP, by default, when you set up a character in Unreal Engine, it comes with this character movement, and by default our character basically comes with gravity. So gravity is enabled on our player character, so we can't move up and down. To disable gravity on our player character, if we go over to details, then look for gravity, and then just make it 0. Then if we just go compile, close, and go play, I should be able to move up, down, towards the left and the right. So I can basically move my player character using my mouse cursor. Nice. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is make it so our player character is always constantly moving forwards. So if we go to the player blueprint, and we just want to find the event tick, so just right click and look for event tick, and the way this node will work is every single frame it will fire this node, and we're going to make it so our player character moves forwards every single frame. So we drag off here and look for add actor world offset. Then just right click on this delta location and split the structure pin. We're only going to be moving our character forwards in the x-axis. So if we just drag off delta seconds and then look for multiply, right click here and permit this to a variable, and just call this forward speed, go compile, and just make this 2000. Then just connect this to the x-axis, as we'll only be moving our player character forwards in one axis. Then if I go compile, save and close this, if I click the play button, I should be constantly moving forwards, and I can move around with my mouse cursor. Nice! So the next thing we're going to do is set up some tunnels which my player character is going to fly through. If you actually briefly close your Unreal Engine project, and attached in this video, I'm going to include this download link to some files. Make sure to download them if you want to follow along, and then inside of your Unreal Engine project, just right click and go show in Explorer, and then just drag these 3 folders into here. These basically contain some assets and materials which we'll use to help us make our game. You may need to just save your project and then close and reopen it so that the materials and assets basically appear. So I'm just going to do that. Okay, so I've done that and I can now see my assets. The MI tunnel material may have not imported correctly. Okay, so yeah. If you just go over to this one, the M tunnel base, then go here. Included in the folders that you imported, there should have been a folder called texture. Go to this first one and just make it the T binary. Then go to the second one and make it the T noise, and to the third one and also make this the T noise. Then just go apply. This basically is a material which we're going to use inside of our tunnel. Then go to the MI material tunnel and just make this the MI tunnel base. Save this, then close this. Then just go over to the MI hole and then select the M hole for the parent and just save that. Okay, and then in the mesh folder there should be this mesh of this tunnel, and then there should also be 4 meshes of some obstacles which the player is going to basically have to kind of fly their way through / dodge and avoid. Okay, I'm just going to go back to my map folder, so here, and we're now ready to continue. So the first thing we're going to do is go over to our blueprints folder and set up a tunnel. So if we just right click, go blueprint class, select an actor, and just call this the tunnel underscore BP. Then if we double click and open this up, I'm just going to go add and look for a static mesh, and then if I go here, and I'm just going to select my SM tunnel, and then for the material, just select the MI tunnel. Okay, then if we just compile, close this, the next blueprint we're going to make is going to be a tunnel spawner blueprint, which will basically continuously spawn some tunnels for my player to fly through. To get started with this, if we just right click, go blueprint class, select an actor, and just call this the tunnel spawner blueprint, then head inside here, then we just want to go to the event graph, and we actually just want to go to create a new function, and just call this spawn tunnel. Go over to inputs, and then we just want to select a vector. So we can basically make a function which takes in some data. Just call this location. Then we just want to drag off this spawn tunnel function and look for spawn actor from class. The actor we're going to spawn is going to be the tunnel blueprint that we just made. Where we're going to spawn it, just right click on the spawn transform and go split structure pin, then connect from location into here. Compile this, then we want to go over to the event graph and event begin play. So this node will fire as soon as our game starts. We are going to call the spawn tunnel function, and then we're just going to leave the location at 0, 0, 0. If we just compile this, close this, and drag in the tunnel spawner somewhere into your level, and I'm just going to select my player, go to the details, and make it so their location is 0, 0, 0. If I just save this and go play, when I start, I should start in my tunnel, as a tunnel will spawn basically where the player starts. Nice. The next thing we're going to do is basically make it whenever we fly through a tunnel, if we successfully fly through that tunnel, it'll spawn another tunnel. So to do that, if we just go over to the tunnel blueprint, and we just want to go add and look for a box collision, and then we just want to place this at the end of this tunnel. So if you just go to X, make it 2500 units, and then I'm just going to go to select and scale objects and expand this. So if the player successfully goes through here, we're going to spawn another tunnel. Where we're going to spawn that tunnel, if we just go add and look for a scene, and just call this spawn location, and with this selected, for the location, just make it 2500. So this is going to be where we spawn another tunnel. We can compile and save this. Then if we go over to the tunnel spawner blueprint, just double click and head inside this function. When we spawn a new tunnel, we just want to right click on here, promote this to a variable, and just call this newest tunnel. So this will basically store the actor that we spawned as a variable. Next, we just want to create another new function. So just go add new function and just call this spawn tunnel at spawn point. And what we're going to do is get our newest tunnel. And what we're going to do is get the newest tunnel and get the spawn location. And then we just want to drag up here and look for get world location. And then we're just going to drag up here and spawn a tunnel at that location. Then if we just go back to our tunnel blueprint, create a new variable and just call it tunnel spawner reference, and for the variable type in tunnel spawner BP, make an object reference, compile it. Then if we just go back to our tunnel spawner blueprint and over to the spawn tunnel, so our newest tunnel knows what the tunnel spawner is, just drag off here and look for set tunnel spawner reference, and then just drag off here and type in self. That way our tunnel blueprint will have a reference to the tunnel spawner blueprint. Then if we just go over to our tunnel blueprint, select this box, scroll down and go on component begin overlap. If this other actor is our player blueprint, so if we just drag off here and look for class to player blueprint, we are going to drag in our tunnel spawn reference. So we'll reference our tunnel spawner, and we're just going to spawn a tunnel at the spawn point, which will spawn another tunnel in front of us, and then we will destroy this actor. So we can compile this, save this, and test this out. So I'm just gonna delete my plane, and if I go play, I go through this tunnel. When I reach the end of it, it will spawn another tunnel. So with this, we have an infinite tunnel. Hello, the next thing we're going to do is make it so our tunnel spawner will initially spawn a couple of tunnels. That way it kind of looks a bit better. So to set this up, if we go over to the tunnel spawner blueprint and just create a new function and just call it spawn initial tunnels. What we're going to do is just drag off here and look for the for loop, and then for the last index, make this 2. So the for loop includes 0 as a number. So what this is going to do is this is going to run 3 times. The first thing we're going to do is check to see if we have a valid tunnel. So if we just drag in this newest tunnel, get it and drag off here and look for is valid. So we're going to check to see if we have a valid tunnel. Initially when we run this, we're not going to have a valid tunnel. So what we're going to do is just drag off this is not valid and just look for spawn tunnel. And where we're going to spawn the tunnel, we're just going to spawn the tunnel wherever the player is. So to do that, we can just right click and look for get player character, then just drag off here and look for get actor location. Then when this runs the spawn tunnel, we'll have a valid new tunnel. If we just go back to the spawn initial tunnels, so when this runs again, this will be valid, and this time we're going to spawn some more tunnels. So if we just drag off here and look for spawn tunnel at spawn point, and that will spawn 2 more tunnels. If I just compile this, then go over to the event graph, I will delete this, and instead drag off here and look for spawn initial tunnels. Then if I go compile, close this, and I can test this out. If I go play, we can see it spawns 3 tunnels, and this just looks a bit better. Nice. Hello, the next thing we're going to do is add some obstacles which the player is going to have to avoid when they're flying through the tunnel. So if we open up the tunnel blueprint and go over to the viewport, I am just going to go add and look for static mesh and just call this our wall. And then for the mesh, select one of the SM holes. So I'm just going to select SM hole 1, and then I want you to move this kind of towards the back, but make sure that the Y and the Z are 0. So I'm just going to place mine, you want to place it a bit in front of the spawn point and the trigger, so somewhere around here. Okay, if we go over to the event graph, we are going to make it so that the hole is kind of rotating when the player kind of flies through it. That way they kind of have to like dodge and adapt. So event tick, if we just drag in our wall and just drag up here and look for add local rotation, and we're only going to be rotating it in one axis, which is going to be the x-axis. So we right click here and split the structure pin, connect from event tick into here, then just drag off delta seconds and look for multiply, and then just right click here, promote this to a variable and call this rotation speed. Compile this, and for now let's just give this a value of, let's say, 1000, and then connect this into x. Then I just compile this, and then one more thing actually I forgot. If we go back to the viewport, I'm just going to give my wall the material of the MI hole, and then we're going to make our wall basically be a random mesh. So it's going to randomly be either this SM hole 1 mesh, this 2 mesh, this 3 mesh, or this 4 mesh. So if we go over to our functions and go create a new function and just call this spawn wall, and what we're going to do is just drag in our wall, drag off here and look for set static mesh. Then if we just drag off this new mesh and look for the select, and then I just want you to go add pin and add 2 more pins. For this first one, select the hole 1, then the hole 2, then the hole 3, then the whole 4. Then just right click and look for random integer in range, connect from this return value to here, and make the max 3. So it's going to randomly pick a mesh to make the wall. And then we're also going to make the wall have a random rotation on top of this. So we just drag up here and look for add local rotation. And then just right click here, split the structure pin, and just right click again and go random float in range. And just make the max 360. Connect this into here. And then we just want to drag in the wall and connect this into here. Compile and save this. Then if we just go back to our tunnel spawner blueprint and we want to go to the spawn tunnel function. After we set the reference to our tunnel spawner, we just want to drag off the newest tunnel and look for spawn wall. And then this will basically make our wall one of these random walls with a random rotation. So we can test this out. If I just go back to my tunnel spawner, compile, save, and close everything. If I click play, we can see there are some walls in my tunnel. Although it's very, very fast, so I think I made it a bit too fast. If I just go back to my tunnel blueprint, enter the event graph, I'm going to make the rotation speed, let's say, 100. Okay. So that is more acceptable. Still kind of fast, so I think I'm actually going to make it 35. Because I think it's quite fast. Okay, I think that's good. Feel free to play with that value. Even this may be a bit fast, but feel free to make it faster or slower. I'm actually just going to make mine a tad bit slower, so I'll make it 15. We can compile, save, and close that. Hello, the next thing we're going to do is fix the collision in our game. Right now, the player can fly through the walls, and if say they hit a wall like this, they still fly through it. We're going to make it so the player can't do this. If we go back to our player blueprint, the way we make the player move is by adding these local offsets. If we just check this sweep box, if I just hover, you'll see, basically, with the sweep box triggered, it's going to check to see if it's going to be blocked by something. And if we're blocked by something, the player will automatically stop. So just check the sweep box here, and also the sweep box here. Then if you just go compile, save, and go over to the tunnel blueprint, enter the viewport, this is our tunnel mesh. If I just click this browse to button, it will take me to where the mesh is located. By default in Unreal Engine, when you import a model, it will come with its own collision. Although this collision is not very good. I think you just go to collision, and then if I just go add sphere collision, and then I'm just gonna select and delete the sphere. This will show me the collision for my mesh. So this is it right now, and it's not entirely accurate. To make it more accurate, what we can do is go to details, scroll down, and go over to use complex as simple, and you're going to see it's highlighted in like purple, and that is the new collision for our mesh. So this will be a lot more accurate, although it does come at the cost of performance in your game. It'll be a bit more laggy as it'll take a bit more resources to load this up, but the collision will be more accurate, so I'm going to use it. So just change it to use complex collision as simple if you want to follow along. Save this, and then we're going to do the same for the holes, because I want these to have accurate collisions. So I'm just going to scroll down and change this to use complex collision as simple. Save this, and just do this for the following holes. Okay, so I've done it for all the holes. Now if I click play, I can't like leave, and if say I get hit on a wall, I can't move unless I go through it. Nice. So now that we've set this up, we're going to make it so if the player hits a wall, they get game over. So to set this up, I'm going to go to my content folder, right click, and go create new folder, and I'm just going to call this UI. Let's head inside here, right click, go user interface, select a widget, blueprint, and select user widget, and I'm just going to call this my game over underscore widget blueprint. If I double click, open it up, and go over to my palette, I'm going to look for a canvas panel and just drag this in. Then I'm going to look for a vertical box, and I'm just going to anchor this to the middle of the screen, and then I'm going to look for a button, I'll drag it inside of this vertical box. Then I'm going to look for some text, drag it inside this button, and I'm just going to make this text say restart. When the player clicks this button, they will restart the game. It's a bit small, so I'm going to go over to font and make this, let's say 100, so it's a bit bigger. If I just compile this and then select this button, make sure it is a variable and just call this the restart button. Scroll down, and when we click this button, what we're going to do is just drag off here and look for open level by object reference. If you're using Unreal Engine 5.1 and above, using open level by name doesn't work anymore, so use open level by object reference, and I'm going to make it open up my map, so just restart my map. I will compile and save this. The next thing we need to do is make it so when the player hits a wall, it will bring up the game over screen. So if I just go over to my blueprints and just find my tunnel blueprint, just select the wall, scroll down, and we want this one on component hit. If this hits our player blueprint, so if we just drag up here, look for cast to player blueprint, we will basically bring up our pause menu. I want to set this up in the player blueprint though, so if we just go to the player blueprint, right click and look for add custom event, and just call this game over. So when the player gets game over, we're just going to drag off here and look for create widget. The widget we're going to create is going to be the game over, and we just want to then drag off here and look for add to viewport. This will add this widget to our screen, and then I'm just going to drag off here and look for set game paused and pause my game. And also, before we do this, because by default in our game we start in our game, we're not actually going to be able to access and see the mouse cursor. So when we call the game over custom event, if we just right click and look for get player controller and drag off here and look for set show mouse cursor and make sure this is checked so we can see our mouse cursor, then just drag off here and look for set input UI and just select set input mode UI only, and this will make it so we can interact with our menu. And then one more thing, inside of the player blueprint, if we just right click and go event begin play, as soon as the game starts, we just want to get our player controller and make sure that we can't see our mouse cursor, so we look for set show mouse cursor, make sure it's unchecked, and then we just want to drag off here and look for set game only. So set input mode, game only. Compile this. Then if I go over to my tunnel blueprint, when we hit the wall, we'll call the game over custom event that we just made. And if I just hit compile, close and play. Okay, so there's just one more thing I want to do, and that is to add a score system to our game. So we'll just add a simple score system. I'm going to go over to my UI, go user interface, select widget blueprint, select user widget, and I'll just call this my score widget blueprint. If I head inside here, I'm going to look for a canvas panel, drag this in, then I'm going to look for a horizontal box, drag it here, and then I'm just going to anchor this to the top left. Then I'm going to look for some text, and we want to drag two pieces of text. This first text, I'm going to make it say score, and then I'm going to have the colon, and then this will display our score. These texts are quite small, so I'm going to make it, let's say 100. Maybe that's a bit too big, so I'll make it 75. And I'm going to make this text purple. So I'll just make it purple like this. Then if we just go over to the graph, event construct, what we're going to do is create a new variable. So if I just go to my variables tab, and I'm just going to call this variable score and make it an integer. And event construct, if we just drag off here and look for set timer by event, and I'm going to make the time 1, check this looping box and just drag off this event and look for add custom event and just call this add score. So every 1 second we'll run this event, and what we'll do is drag in our score variable, get it, drag off here and look for increment int, and this will increase this value of this by 1. then connect this into here, and if we just go to the designer and select this text, go bind, and then bind it to a score, so this text will show whatever our score variable is. And we just want to go back to our player blueprint and event begin play. After we do this, we are going to create a widget, and this widget is going to be the score, and then we will add this to our viewport. So I go compile and I go play, we can see my score. My score was 1 that time, so it's 1, 2, 3, so I only got 3, but the top left will basically show us our score. And with this we have a simple game where the player basically has to dodge and go through the holes in the wall. To make things look a bit cooler, what I'm going to do is just remove the directional lighting and the exponential fog, basically all the light elements, so it's just lit by the lit materials that we have. So that's all for this video. If you enjoyed, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!